Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Wiraasat-e-Hind, a platform where we celebrate the stories, struggle, and success of Indian Muslims across the world. Today's conversation is a truly special one. It is our first ever interview at Wiraasat-e-Hind, and it is with someone who is truly impressive and inspiring. I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Altaf Husain, Associate Dean of Academic and Student Advancement at the Howard University of Social Work, one of the most historically significant institutions in the United States. He is also a vice president at Yaqeen Institute, which was founded or co founded by Sheikh Omar Suleiman. Dr. Altaf also co founded the National Association of Muslims in Social Work to train Muslims in social work. Dr. Hussein's journey is not just an academic success story, it is a story of purpose, service, and leadership, rooted in values that deeply resonates with our community. In this conversation, we will explore his journey as an Indian Muslim in the diaspora and how he built a legacy centered on social work and justice, and why representation, mentorship, and giving back matter now more than ever. For this conversation, I grabbed him at a place after the event finished. And so it was a bit unorganized. I did not get enough time to set up, but pardon the appearance and focus on the conversation. Let's begin. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam.
Altaf bhai, pleasure meeting you. It's an honor. You're visiting here in New Jersey, so it was a great opportunity to discuss with you. I'm particularly very impressed the way your journey has been and the field that you've chosen to really serve the humanity, right? I mean, the wider ummah as well as a lot of work that you're doing. And I think it's important that Indian Muslim diaspora as well as Indian Muslims actually hear your story and get that inspiration. I think that's what we want to actually share today. And since the time is a little short, so I want to actually get started.
Yeah, please.
I've already done your introduction, but I want to start with, like, in your words, let's start at the beginning and tell us about your journey from the town in the India and all the way to here.
MashaAllah. No, thank you so much, Ashada Bhai, for doing this work, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring some benefit from it. So, essentially, my father's side is from Raichur, and then we had moved into Hyderabad proper, and so that side of the family basically raised us for the first 6 years of my life. So we were in Hyderabad, and then my father was coming for PhD to the US. So we had moved with my Nana, who is in Sholapur, so in Maharashtra. So we've had the upbringing both in Hyderabad and also in Sholapur. In Hyderabad, actually, we lived in the regional research lab colony in Tarnaka. Yeah, so we used to be in Tarnaka. I attended St. Anne's school. At that time it was co-ed because now when I tell people, they said, "How did you go there?" Yeah, at that time it was co-ed, and then we moved here when I was 10 years old in 1981.
Wow.
Yeah. So since that time, we have been raised here, and both sides of the family actually resisted partition. So both sides organized in before police action and during police action in Hyderabad, and also in Sholapur, to say that that we have roots in India, and there is no need for us to go anywhere else. Exactly. We'll maintain identity, and we'll be Indian Muslims, and we'll be proud of it, and we'll practice our religion like that. Yeah, so those were the beginnings. Yeah.
And now that you are here, you are basically the associate dean at the Howard University, right?
Yeah.
I mean, an institution known for the social justice and
Yeah.
social service. Tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about it and the work that you've done with also Yaqeen Institute.
Yeah, so how this came to be for me to even end up at Howard University is that when I was growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, my father and mother made a huge deal of making sure that we were very integrated into the African American Muslim community. So from the beginning, we were a part and parcel of that community, and we learned from them about Islam in America. And so it was natural that when I finished my master's degree, that one of the options was to go to Howard University in Washington, D.C.
Such a great brand.
It's a historically black university, as you know. And so the social justice component was very alive. And even how I chose social work was because my parents on weekends, Sunday we would go to the masjid, have Sunday school. Then after Sunday school, we would end up actually going to different people's homes. And then as kids, we would be upset because everybody else is going home, but we are not going home. We are going to somebody's house. So they would get some, news about somebody was unemployed, or somebody lost a relative, or somebody is not sick, or they're not doing well. So they were doing house visits to look at the how to help them in different ways. And so then that trained me basically to say, oh, there must be a systematic way to do this, and that is the field of social work. So that's how I came to do that.
Yeah.
How the-
And like you have now made it almost like a full-time activity for you, right? I mean, um, tell us about like people who are interested in this, but they don't think that this could become a career. Can this be a career?
It
And
can, yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
could be the blockers that people have to generally come over?
Right. So, the social work as a career, it's interesting because when I was, I finished my engineering degree actually in a bachelor's degree, biomedical engineering. Then I had a terrible car accident just before graduation. So mentally, I was trying to process, will I just do everything that everybody else did? Medicine, engineering, these things, or is there some other way to manage this and help and so forth? And so I had selected social work. So people think that it cannot be a career. So actually, the biggest barrier is internally in the community itself. They say,
The
"Oh,
mindset.
you can do that on the weekends," but within social work, you'll be amazed. In the United States, 70% of the mental health services are provided by social workers. So we never hear about this because we
Yeah.
think it's a volunteer job. No, it's a full-time profession, and you can do clinical social work, or you can do what I do, which is macro social work, which is community organizing, social justice advocacy, running nonprofit organizations, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and so forth. Yeah, so we learned about this, and then we put it into practice. And now, Alhamdulillah, just last year we launched the National Association of Muslims in Social Work in America. Yeah, so anybody who is interested in coming, we're guiding them. Anybody who's currently in social work, we're working with them to promote more Islamic resources and so forth. Yeah,
Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
So we talked about social work could be a career,
Yeah,
but I feel that it's we are living in a time where it's almost an obligation.
Yeah.
Because of the
Yeah.
context, right? The
Yeah.
societal context, both in India as well
Yeah.
as here. Tell us a bit more about that, from Islamic point of view.
Yeah.
How is that like so important and
Yeah.
almost like an obligation for us to actually do that kind of social work
Yeah.
and in the present need as well?
Yeah. So there we can separate it. So there is the idea of working towards social justice. And this, as I mentioned, was in my both families, my Nana's side, my Dada's side, both of them. So Sayyid Nurul Hussain, Allah yarhamu, he is the Hyderabad side. And then Hazrat Umar Khan is the from the Sholapur side. Both were actively involved in feeding the poor, in essentially working across the caste system in India as Muslims, to hiring people for different positions, and and incorporating them into their businesses and so forth. So as I observed that, then I realized, oh, it doesn't have to be that something has always been done one way, so you cannot change it. So what do you do? Interestingly enough, we're sitting in New Jersey now. So we landed in January 1981 in JFK, and we had to spend the night there. And then morning flight was to Cleveland, Ohio, where we were settled. So my father and mother say that whole night I didn't let them sleep. The whole night I was crying and saying कि देश की सेवा करना है तो यहाँ क्यों ले आए? Like, why are we here? How have you brought us here when we should be serving our nation?
Mashallah, you had a
And
vision
so
since then.
and so it means that somebody had taught me that wherever a Muslim lives, that's where they serve. Now, of course, we cannot forget the roots of India and going back and forth, but that's where you serve. So you serve. You don't have to be in the profession of social work, but you can volunteer. You can contribute funds. You can organize different activities to do. Winter is here. Clothing drive. Suppose Muslims did every winter the largest clothing drive for coats and jackets and gloves. Imagine the perception of Muslims shifts from being all of the negative things into, oh, these are people who contribute towards society, right? Feeding the hungry. In Ramadan, we are fasting. But what if we flipped the script and said, oh, why don't you go and feed people and let people know that this is the beauty of this month and so forth? So many things to be done towards social justice, towards fighting injustice, fighting oppression. And then that's in a volunteer sense. But in the professional sense, you can actually get the degree. a
Yeah.
bachelor in social work, a master in social work, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's so important because I think there is generally perception that okay, do the charity without one hand knowing another.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel that Muslims, while are known for one of the most or probably the top most donation giver or
Yes,
charity
yeah,
giver, but it's unorganized and unrecognized work,
yeah,
right? They try to do it anonymously. We talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
anonymous. Um, I think, but I think that mindset has to change. It doesn't need to be. It is not a problem to do it openly, and sometimes it
yeah.
is required
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, and so that point I'm glad you emphasized that is because this is a misinterpretation of humility. Because people often think, oh, to be humble or to be, to have humility, then you shouldn't talk. Well, if you never discuss, so suppose I came to New Jersey, and if there was some kind of charity,
Yeah.
function, and we are friends, so it's good for you to say, hey, Altaf bhai, I'm going to this, and we are raising money for orphans or raising money for people who are homeless. So you should
Yeah.
you should talk about it.
I do feel that, and that's why I used to feel earlier that okay, if you have to donate, do it
Yeah,
anonymously, don't let
yeah,
anybody know. But I
yeah,
realized that we inspire each other, and
exactly.
if somebody like my peers of five
Yeah,
families in the circle, if
yeah,
they know that I'm doing, or
yes,
if I know somebody else is doing, I
yeah,
feel inspired. Sometime I
exactly.
started
Yeah,
turn my mind, and I
yeah,
felt that it is important sometime
yeah.
to do it
That's
like
right.
in the community so that
Yeah,
people know.
that's
So
right.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a very important point. The other is that how do you feel as an Indian Muslim heritage?
Yeah,
How important is this representation of Indian Muslims
yeah,
and
yeah,
NRIs in the
yeah,
leadership role
yeah,
like
yeah,
yourself
yeah.
and now, mashallah, Zoran Mamdani, Ghazal
Yes,
Hashmi,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That was, I
yeah.
think, I would say the one of the
Turning
biggest,
point. Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
Indian Muslim NRIs kind of. I think that's very important because
yeah,
it set the example.
yeah.
What can they do? This Indian Muslim diaspora, how can they give back here
Yes,
as well as
yeah,
there?
yeah. So I mean, the number one thing is that we have to understand that the history of Islam in India is very old. So we cannot break those roots. We can never stop telling our children about those roots. We can never stop introducing them to that. So over time, I think the benefit will be that we are having a life here, and we are supporting community and building community here. But we have a obligation to maintain connection with not only family and relatives, but also other situations in India. Why? Because as people know in the news, it is difficult to be a Muslim in India. So who can they turn to?
Yep.
And they can only turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to us to say, okay, what can we do together? How can we promote? And the history of Indian Muslims in America is also very old. In the turn of the century, 1800s, they were coming as from Punjab. So among them were Hindus and Muslims. So believe it or not, they were settling in California, Washington State, as far north as Vancouver, and they were practicing their religion. They whatever they could do, they would do. There are even stories of how they became very big businessmen. One of them went on to be a wealthy man because he developed a whole farm. They were farm workers for chicken, and he supplied during World War One the for American sorry, I think World War Two. Well, American Army. He was one of the main suppliers of chicken, halal, of course,
There's so
because he's
many
a Muslim manager.
unrecognized heroes
Exactly,
actually. Yeah.
exactly. So the idea isn't that you have to be famous to do something. It's just you have to have commitment and concern, and then make your contribution. What will it be? If it's just volunteering, do that. If it's donating money, do that. If nothing else, at least keep up with the news. As Indian Muslims in the diaspora, we must at least keep up with the news so that we don't hear much later, and we can go. We should go to our Congress people, senators, and tell them, "Hey, I am an Indian Muslim.
Yeah.
I'm here in America, and my people there." So pressure, the government there. Don't just do deals with them without asking about the state of Indian Muslims.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so important
yeah,
actually. And as a community, once they come together, connect, we can do it as a group. It's hard to
yeah.
do it as an individual,
Individual.
but
Yeah.
I think that's so important. Um, so, living in this US, how do you keep your Indian Muslim heritage still alive?
Yeah, no. So this is challenging. So as we are farther and farther from the time of arrival, right? So most Indian Muslims were arriving in the '60s, and then many of them came later, and then and so forth. Even like myself. So my wife is of Egyptian ancestry. So now you have two of the oldest civilizations,
Indo-Arab
right?
mix now. Yeah.
Indo-Arab mix like that. So what I try to do is take specific issues. For example, education. So while the children are studying, schooling, and these things, remind them of the privilege they have to become educated. We have 3 sons, 1 daughter. The daughter is getting educated. How they tell them the stories, right? Their own grandmother, their nani, my mother, their dadi, my mother, for example, she was only 12 or 13, and you remember the story repeated over and over. Her father came to the school and wrote the letter to say, because of parda, I am removing my daughter now because she has reached the age of maturity, and now she will be at home and she will be raised. So then imagine now her granddaughter and her own daughters studied, get bachelors, masters. They're working. They're principal in school. One is a teacher. So then we say, oh, what is possible as an Indian Muslim? Always connect back, right? Connect back to the contributions. I told them about the idea of Nizam of Hyderabad. I mean, as Indian Muslims being in America, if we don't know this history, so I tell them stories about family. I tell them stories about India itself. I tell them, the accomplishments and also the downfalls. We still have a dominant caste system where a majority of the people who are Dalit are still in the category.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
The struggle continues for them.
And I tell them that imagine if you don't take away this disease of caste and this like that, it's coming to California.
Yeah.
They're being discriminated as Dalit against here in America.
Yeah.
By others, of the Brahmin caste and so forth. So we don't want to talk negative about anybody, but we want to teach our children that this is the reality of being India. It's a large country. It's a very rich country in terms of history and heritage. So keep connecting by issues. Yeah. You cannot, so that helps.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah.
And I think that heritage is important, and also connect with the wider Indian heritage as well, with the other group like
That's right.
Dalit and others.
That's
all
right.
the group.
Yeah.
Now you talked about Hyderabad, of course.
Yeah.
Hyderabadis love food.
Alhamdulillah.
What is your one
Alhamdulillah.
favorite dish
Alhamdulillah.
among so many that you have?
Yeah. So so interestingly enough, I was saying that this bagare baigan dish, right?
Yes.
So it's because of edible with both roti and rice. That it becomes the favorite, because you can get so much out of it. It's nutrition. It's has mashallah good. Well, when it's too much oil, is problem. But that is one. Yeah, that is one of them. And then in the dessert side, we have to say double ka meetha, because how else can you
I love food as well, and
Alhamdulillah.
both are actually my favorite as well.
Mashallah.
My mom also used to make actually bagare bengan.
Mashallah,
Yeah,
mashallah.
it's actually popular in North as well.
Exactly.
And then double ka meetha, we used to call it shahi
sure.
tukda.
Shahi
basically,
tukda. Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's
Yeah.
still my favorite.
Mashallah,
actually. I
mashallah.
love that. And
Alhamdulillah.
I love it,
Alhamdulillah.
that ghee and everything.
That's right.
So, but yeah.
Mashallah.
One last question
Yeah.
for you.
Ji.
Otherwise, this is, since we're recording it for Wiraasat-e-Hind,
Yeah.
what is your message that Indian Muslims who are watching this Wiraasat-e-Hind to carry forward in their lives? The
Yeah.
final message,
Yeah.
what would that be?
Yeah. So Indian Muslims generally, or here in America?
Anywhere.
Anywhere,
basically,
okay.
Yeah.
So, our ancestors, meaning the people who basically raised us and brought us to where we are now, they sacrificed so much with very minimal resources to establish and maintain the identity as Muslims. So we have to come to a point where we say, you know what, it doesn't make sense that we have this full heritage of our ancestors doing all of these things under minimal resources. We have power, we have privilege, we have voting power, we have, mashallah, people are earning money and have wealth to be able to contribute. So one message is that the Indian roots can never be forgotten, number one, but connected to that is, what is my contribution? What is the least I can do? Can I make dua for Indian Muslims particularly under all the oppression and attacks? And then can I do something to change their situation? Can I make donations to relief efforts there towards education of especially the poor Indian Muslims and to improve their well-being, inshallah. So a message of unity, a message of concern, a message of commitment, and ultimately no contribution is too small. So if you can only make dua, and that's what you can do, make dua and say, oh Allah, all of the ancestors of ours who are Indian Muslims, who did everything possible to get us to where we are, grant them the highest station in paradise and help us to be better and do more than what they were able to do. Ameen. Yeah.
Ameen. MashaAllah. Jazakallah, Altaf bhai, you are such an inspiration. MashaAllah, that, wherever you go, you inspire everybody, and it was such a pleasure and honor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
And I know
Shadab
that
bhai,
you
for
have
your
long
work.
travel.
Shadab bhai, for your work as well. Mashallah, this is important work.
This is
May Allah
important.
bless you
That
and
is-
continue to benefit.
Inshallah.
Shukriya.
Jazakallah.